Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. I never liked the night shift, but it paid the bills. The dim streetlights barely cut through the fog as I drove, the quiet hum of my old sedan a constant companion on these late rides home. Tonight, however, the shift ended earlier, a rare equipment failure at the plant granting me a few extra hours of freedom. I'd planned to surprise my wife, Maggie, maybe even scoop her up for a late-night ice cream run, like we used to before our schedules upended our routines. As I pulled into the driveway, the first thing that caught my eye wasn't the familiar darkness of our small home, but the unusual glow of light seeping through the living room curtains. Odd, I thought. Maggie's supposed to be at her sister's tonight. The thought prickled the back of my neck as I killed the engine and stepped out into the cool air. I approached the house quietly, the small crunch of gravel under my shoes sounding louder than usual. The living room light flickered, casting shadows that danced along the curtains. My heart hammered as I reached the window and peered inside, the scene before me slicing through the calm of the night. Maggie was there, unmistakably close and intimate with someone I'd never seen before. They were wrapped in an embrace, laughing softly at something on the TV, completely oblivious to the world crumbling outside that warmly lit room. Rage boiled over as I watched, the betrayal stinging sharper than the chill in the air. Without a second thought, I barged through the front door, the sudden intrusion startling them both as they sprang apart. "Maggie," I roared, my voice echoing a mix of hurt and anger. "What the hell is this?" Maggie's eyes widened, fear and confusion etching her features. "Tom, it's not what it looks like, I swear." The man stood up, adjusting his shirt as he eyed the door, clearly calculating his escape. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "Get out," I cut him off, pointing aggressively towards the door. Without another word, he scurried past me, a swift exit into the night. Maggie sobbed, her hands trembling as she reached for me. "Tom, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I snapped, my voice hoarse with emotion. "I trusted you, Maggie. And you're here with another man in our house." She was still crying, her tears doing nothing to quench the fire of betrayal. "Tom, please, I made a mistake. It's not what you think." "I don't care what it is," I interrupted. Her pleas fell on deaf ears as I pointed to the door. "You need to leave too. Go stay with your sister or wherever. I can't even look at you right now." Maggie gathered a few things hurriedly, her sobbing punctuating the cold silence that had settled between us. As she left, the weight of what had just transpired sank in, leaving a hollow emptiness in its wake. The house was quiet now, too quiet. My mind raced as the adrenaline faded, replaced by a cold, calculating anger. I needed a plan, something to make sense of this betrayal, to rectify the injustice of it all. As I sat in the dim light of the living room, an idea began to form, dark and twisted. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about teaching a lesson, one that Maggie would never forget. As the early hours of the morning ticked by, I started to put my plan into motion, each step unfolding with a chilling precision. This was just the beginning. The sun hadn't risen yet when I found myself outside Joe's gym, a gritty little establishment on the edge of town where the clank of weights and the scent of determination were as constant as the sunrise. I needed to clear my head, and pounding the treadmill seemed like a good start. More importantly, Joe, an old friend from high school and a part-time private investigator, could offer more than just workout advice. Joe was already there, lifting weights in the corner. His burly figure towered over the equipment, each lift marked with a grunt of exertion. "Tom," Joe set down the weights with a heavy clank and wiped his brow. "Didn't expect to see you this early. Everything all right?" "Not really, Joe. Can we talk?" We retreated to his cramped office, a small room cluttered with files and old gym posters. I laid it all out for him: the early return home, the other man, Maggie's tears, and my fury. Joe listened, nodding slowly. "So, what's your plan?" "I want to find out who he is, everything about him. I want to make sure he regrets stepping into my house." Joe arched an eyebrow. "You sure that's the way to go? Sounds like you might be stirring up a hornet's nest." "I don't care," I replied firmly. "Can you help me?" He sighed, the weight of old friendships pulling at him. "All right, I'll see what I can dig up. But Tom, be careful. revenge has a way of backfiring? I left the gym with a mix of gratitude and a gnawing sense of urgency. As I drove back, my phone buzzed. It was Rick, my colleague from the plant. "Hey Tom, you heard about the shutdown tonight?" "Yeah, equipment failure, right. Or like sabotage. Boss thinks someone messed with the machinery. They're calling in a specialist to check it out." Sabotage? The word echoed in my mind, mingling with thoughts of betrayal. Could there be a connection? I wondered. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work and whispered phone calls with Joe. He had found something on the man, something big. We met at a quiet diner in the evening. Joe slid a folder across the table to me. His name's Derek, and guess what? He's got a record of few entries. Nothing violent, mostly fraud and a bit of hacking. Hacking, I perked up. Could he be behind the sabotage at my work? It's a stretch, but Joe trailed off, shrugging. I could look into it. I nodded, my mind racing. Do it. And Joe, there's more. I want to make him pay publicly. Can we set something up? Maybe catch him in the act. Joe was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. It's risky, but possible. We'd need a plan, something foolproof. As we hashed out the details, a dark satisfaction settled over me. This wasn't just about catching a cheat anymore, it was about weaving a net that would ensnare Derek completely, publicly. I would expose him for who he was, and in doing so, maybe I could regain some of what I'd lost. But as I drove home, a new thought emerged, unbidden and chilling. What if Maggie was more involved than I knew? The question lingered, a shadow growing in the corners of my mind. The following days were a blur of anticipation and preparation. I couldn't shake the suspicion that Maggie might be more involved than just a moment of weakness. The pieces didn't fit, it wasn't like her, and now the potential sabotage at work added another layer of complexity. If Derek was indeed a hacker, could he have targeted the plant for a reason linked to Maggie? While Joe continued digging into Derek's past and possible connections to my workplace, I started laying the groundwork for our trap. I wanted to expose Derek in a way that left no room for doubt. I needed tangible proof, and for that we needed to catch him red-handed. "All right, Tom," Joe said over the phone, his voice serious. "I've set up a bait. A fake company account with enough vulnerabilities that any half-decent hacker would take a swing at it. We've spread some rumors about a big financial move. If Derek is as snoopy as his record suggests, he'll bite. And when he does, we trace him, catch him in the act, and hand him over to the authorities with all the evidence." It sounded solid, but the gnawing in my gut wouldn't stop. I needed to confront Maggie to see if she was somehow part of this. The thought tormented me, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. I arranged to meet Maggie at a public park, neutral ground. It was late afternoon, and the sun cast long shadows over the grass as she approached, looking worn and wary. "Tom, why here? What's going on?" Maggie's voice trembled, a mix of fear and hope flickering in her eyes. I took a deep breath, my hands clenched in my pockets. "Maggie, I need to know everything. Who is Derek? And be honest, is there anything linking him to your sister or my job?" Maggie's face went pale, her lips parting slightly as if shocked by the accusation. "Tom, I swear, I don't know anything about your job. Derek was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. I met him through a friend, not my sister. He's nobody." I studied her, searching for any sign of deceit. "And you had no idea he's a hacker? That he might be involved in something illegal?" "No, I didn't know. Tom, please, I'm so sorry." Tears welled up in her eyes and she reached out, but I stepped back. "If I find out you're lying, Maggie." "I'm not, Tom, I swear to you." Her voice broke and she sobbed, covering her face. I left her there, her cries echoing behind me as I walked away, the pieces of our fractured life still tumbling in my mind. The next evening, Joe's plan swung into action. We holed up in his office, surrounded by monitors displaying various feeds and data points. Joe was tracking the bait account, waiting for the bite. "It's happening," Joe suddenly announced, pointing at a screen where lines of code cascaded. He took the bait. "I'm tracing it now." The trace led straight back to Derek, just as planned. We watched, almost holding our breath, as Joe gathered all the evidence. "Got him," Joe finally said, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "This is enough to nail him for good." With the evidence secured, we called the police. I felt a mix of relief and vindication as they went to arrest Derek. Yet, the victory was hollow. The doubt about Maggie's involvement still haunted me, unresolved and corrosive. The true extent of the betrayal, whether it was just a broken vow or something deeper, darker, remained just out of reach. The arrest of Derek brought a superficial calm to my life, but the storm within hadn't settled. The pieces were in place, yet the puzzle wasn't complete. Maggie's innocence or complicity still hung in the balance, an unanswered question that gnawed at me relentlessly. The relief of Derek's capture was overshadowed by the looming confrontation I knew I had to face with Maggie. Joe and I sat in his office, reviewing the details one last time before I decided to confront Maggie with everything. "You sure you want to do this now?" Joe asked, concern etched across his face. "It's been a whirlwind, Tom. Maybe give it a bit more time." "No," I replied firmly. "I need to know the full truth from her tonight." As I drove to our house, now strangely silent and empty of Maggie's presence, the weight of the impending conversation pressed down on me. I found her sitting in the living room, the lights dimmed, her figure silhouetted against the faint glow of the setting sun. "Maggie," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "Derek is arrested. They caught him hacking into a corporate account set up by Joe to trap him." Maggie looked up, her face pale, her eyes searching mine. "Tom, I need the truth, Maggie. All of it. Now." She took a deep breath and nodded, wiping away a tear. "There's more to it, Tom, more than just a fling. Derek approached me a few months ago. He knew about your work. He used me, Tom." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Used you how, Maggie? What are you saying?" "He threatened to expose an old mistake I made, something that could ruin my career. He was obsessed with getting back at you through your plant, manipulating me into helping him somehow access the systems. I didn't know what he was planning exactly. I swear, Tom, I didn't help him with the sabotage. But I couldn't tell you. I thought I could handle it, make it go away." The pieces clicked, a bitter puzzle completing itself in front of my eyes. And the affair. "It was part of his coercion," Maggie whispered, her voice breaking. "A way to keep me close, controlled. I was so scared, Tom. Anger, betrayal, and a sorrow too deep to name welled up inside me. Why didn't you trust me to help you, Maggie?" "I thought I could protect you," she sobbed. "I didn't want my mistake to destroy us." We sat in silence, the gap between us filled with the weight of her confession. After a moment, I stood up, my mind made up. "I need some time, Maggie. I can't sort this out tonight." As I headed to the door, my phone rang. It was Joe. "Tom, you better sit down for this." "What is it?" I asked, a sense of foreboding settling over me. "It's about the plant sabotage. We got more security footage. It wasn't just Derek. He had an inside man." A pause. A heavy breath. "It's Rick, Tom, your colleague." The floor seemed to drop beneath me. Rick, my own friend, involved? It was almost too much to process. "Are you sure, Joe?" "Crystal. Police are picking him up now." I hung up and turned back to Maggie, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. "It's not over yet," I said, the exhaustion of the day making my knees weak. "But we'll face it. Together." In that moment, I realized that while the betrayal was deep, the path to forgiveness might still be possible. The road would be long and hard, fraught with the remnants of broken trust and the shadows of past mistakes, but perhaps, just perhaps, not entirely out of reach.